to Discuss With Us podcast, where we are unpacking the world through a Christian lens. I am your host, Darcy Durkowski, along with my husband, Brian, and our intention is to pose topics, trending and otherwise, and unpack them with the help of some research, insights from our different backgrounds, and even some listener input in a way that is thought-provoking and entertaining. So get comfortable, grab your favorite beverage, and discuss with us.
Welcome back to another episode of Discuss With Us. Yes, we still do this. I'm here.
Brian's back in the studio. We're all back in the studio. I've been doing the reflections from my phone, so hopefully this audio is much better today.
Yeah, you get the intro song.
Yeah.
Everybody likes that.
Yeah, I know. Although I'm out of practice with this, so I'm having to reteach myself how to speak into the microphone.
Recording is enabled, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, it is. I'm glad to have you back.
I took Lent off. That was my...
You gave up podcasting for Lent? I don't think that was actually a thing.
I just didn't tell you, but it just seemed like
In fact, I'm pretty sure we made the statement that we were going to be better about podcasting, and then we very quickly didn't.
And this is just a lesson that sometimes what you do for Lent doesn't work out.
Yeah.
But you can always just start all over.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Well, I enjoyed doing the reflections. I really did.
I enjoyed listening to them.
Did you listen to all of them?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll go back and check.
No, but I did enjoy doing those reflections, but it is a very different animal doing a reflection, because it's just me.
Just you sitting in the closet.
Yeah, literally most of the times. I think pretty much every one I did from my closet, because that's the only place I can hide from the kids and lock the door, and it's kind of somewhat soundproof.
Yeah. All your clothes on the floor make a good sound barrier.
Audio. Yeah, good for audio. Don't call me out. But yeah, it's like a one long monologue.
Yeah. I know.
So it's a whole different deal.
You do well changing your voice and stuff like that to make it interesting. It's not just all monotone, but yeah.
Well, that's good.
We
to
have
know.
2 kids playing baseball, so I chalk that up as my reason to not.
Well, yeah. Not only are they both in their little sports right now, but you're coaching both teams,
Yes.
which does carry...
Managing. I'm not coaching. I'm managing.
Oh, is that really the term?
Yeah, the manager of the team, yes.
I didn't know that was the term.
You've never heard? We watch the Astros all the time. Joe Espada is the manager.
No, dear, I know the Astros have Joe. They have a manager. I know baseball teams have
Joe Espada.
managers, but I don't think the Little League recognizes the manager position. I think they just say coach. Am I wrong?
Well, head coach or manager.
Okay, that's funny. All right, we need to kick this off because this one could get lengthy.
Yeah.
So diving back into our topics today.
Oh, where are we?
Yeah.
Are we in the middle of something?
No, yeah, kind of.
Well,
so
the world is, yes.
Yeah, the world is, yes. So we had a good Easter. We did Easter at the lake. It was very enjoyable.
Yeah, where do we pick up? Do we go back to February and start going forward?
We absolutely do not. We go back to this past Sunday, and we did Easter at the lake, and we've been going to what we call Lake Church because it's apparently Lake Somerville's our home away from home.
Yeah.
I never knew that would be the thing, but it is. And so we call St. Anne's there in Somerville, our lake church, our vacation church, and we've been enjoying that. I gotta say,
it is nice. Which I will give one small thing, and we're not the world's greatest at this, but hopefully we'll get better now because we kind of had this realization. While Somerville is not a far vacation for us, going to a different church while you're on any type of vacation or little trip, sometimes it's a nice little pick-me-up.
It is. Yeah, we were talking after this last lake church. one of our favorite church experiences ever was when we were on our honeymoon in Maui and we went to church there. It's just something
Yeah.
about like being, I think, especially for sure Catholics, because you know exactly what to expect when you're going in there, and you know that your readings and
Hmm.
everything are going to be the same as your church back home. But regardless of Catholic or not, I don't know. When you're on vacation, you're like in a better mode, probably more open to
Well,
what
I think
what
it's
God's
just
wanting to
nice
speak to
seeing
you.
other people,
Yes.
seeing other people
Mm-hmm.
still worship. It's probably, the same way when you go to like a camp or anything when you're younger, or
Yeah.
retreat even as an adult. Like I know
Yeah.
you've gone to
That's true.
some. So, but anyways, just a little tidbit. If you're on vacation, church actually
It's
isn't.
nice.
Yeah,
It is.
it's not a drag.
It's not. So yeah, Easter was great. Hope you all had a great Easter. And we're still celebrating over here, but something, I won't even say threw a wrench in it because a lot of us are viewing this as very, like a profound, happening, I guess. That, well, why did you give me that look when I said that?
I thought you were
I,
gonna say something else.
oh, okay. Um, Anyways, Easter Monday, Pope Francis passed away.
Yes.
Um, so we start this Easter celebration and then Pope Francis dies. And some people struggle with that, and I get it. You know, you're sad obviously that he's passing, but what a way to go. You just, preached Easter service,
Yeah.
gave those I forget, I read earlier about like the last like blessing he gave. You send people out and then the next morning you pass away. I don't know. It's to me, profound probably isn't the right word, but
Well, I mean, it's almost like a movie or something, honestly.
yeah.
So, but yes. So it got us to, hey, maybe we should do a podcast episode.
Well, because we were talking about the Pope. This is my first
Yeah, I didn't even realize that.
yeah, so this is my first succession, I guess you would say, to go through from one pope to another, um being a Catholic.
Did you ever pay attention to it before
Um
at all?
no, not really. I mean, as much as was in the news and everything.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't really either. So,
Yeah. But that this week, and even not that I haven't paid attention to Pope Francis. I've read some of his things. I've watched some of the, obviously all the controversial stuff pops up, and
hmm
you watch that, and I've talked with you about some of those things. But this week is definitely the most that I have delved into what all being a pope is about. Not that I didn't come to a decent understanding of the Pope and the papal office before I converted, but this is definitely the most in depth dive that I've given. And so,
me too.
having said all that, we were like, this is our opportunity. This is staring us in the face. We've
Yeah.
got to do an episode on the Pope.
So strap in.
Yeah.
About to learn you some Pope talk.
Gosh. Okay. Where do we get started here? Should we start with?
I think we give a little background on Francis, right?
Yeah, okay. Before we kind of go into more structurally, like the papal office, like I just said, let's talk a little about Pope Francis. Do you want to start? I don't have a lot on him specifically.
Yeah, I probably don't either.
You had more of the facts.
One fun fact for you will be he was the first pope from the Americas. We've still never had a North American pope,
Yes.
but Francis was the first from South America.
Latin America, right? So he was Argentinian?
Argentinian, I believe. Oh
Okay.
man, this is bad if we already don't know that.
I think that's correct. This
The
is
one thing
this is
we
a good
didn't look
place.
up.
No, this is like a good place to put a little disclaimer here that Brian and I just are talking about this stuff,
Yeah.
and that
We shoot from the hip a lot.
yeah, well, we try not to do that. I wouldn't say go as far as to say shoot from the hip,
Well,
but we
it's
also
more-
don't claim to be theologians or
I just always I like to, we were talking about this the other day. I like to live my life as if the smartphones don't exist. Like back in the day when you used to just argue your point,
Oh, yeah. We were saying that like when you
nobody
say
could fact
something
check
and
you.
nobody's like, "Wait, let me Google that." Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So,
Argentina. We were right. I just Googled it.
okay. Speaking of the Google,
Yeah. Well, I need it for this because
yeah.
people were looking me
Um
up.
well, but that was my point. If you look us up and we were wrong on something, we'll just go ahead and
Whoops.
apologize now.
Yep.
It wasn't intentional. Okay, so yes, Pope Francis. His name isn't actually Pope Francis, right?
Yeah. No.
Jorge.
Yes.
I'm gonna say the ravioli, and it's not Bertolio or whatever. It's close.
Bergoglio.
Okay, see, that is close. One thing that I thought was so interesting. I obviously there's been a lot in the news and on the old Instagram and everything on the Pope. And one video I watched was an interview, and I think it was done. I think it was done shortly after Pope Francis was, what do you call that? Elected? That's not even the right
No,
term.
it's not elected.
I know that sounds way too
We'll get to that
appointed.
later.
Okay, yes, we'll cross that bridge. Um, he had just accepted the papal office, I guess. I don't know how to say this, but anyways, um, and it was an interview with one of his
I think
nephews.
they're appointed, right?
Maybe you should look that up too. Google it.
We're going to go with that one. I think it's appointed.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds better. It does sound correct. But anyways, an interview done with his nephew shortly after he became Pope Francis, and I thought it was so interesting because I had never thought about this from a perspective like that. I mean, honestly, never given half of this any thought. But the nephew was saying how he heard the news and he just wept, just cried out of, obviously on the one hand, just so thrilled and happy for his uncle, but also his family somewhat like mourned the loss of him as their uncle because
Yeah.
he was now billions of Catholics' father. And not only, he didn't, I think the way the nephew put it was that he didn't belong to us anymore.
Yeah, and that somewhat happens a little bit, I guess, when you're just a priest in general. But yeah, to a
Yes.
much more extreme level here. So I thought that was fascinating too when you said that. It was interesting. I'd never really thought about that before. Frankly, priests and
Yes.
as you go higher up, you really do, like, just because they don't marry and have children of their own, most of them do have families, and that
Yes.
really, like, even us going to church on, like, you forget about that because
Yes, you do.
just their flock is the church.
And it's not that they just abandon their families or forget their families or don't hold their family in
No,
high
we do.
regard. But yes, I think, I mentioned this the other day, I think in one of my reflections, talking about, or maybe, I don't know, it gets lost in conversation. I know I said this to you about how a priest is supposed to hold all of their people in his heart. And so as the Pope, you've got just a massive, like the nephew said, he almost doesn't belong to his family anymore. He's the father of so many at that point. So I just thought that was kind of a fascinating perspective. Anything else on Pope Francis?
He was a Jesuit priest.
Oh yeah. Okay. Can you explain what that is?
Very poorly. I tried to follow it. The closest thing I got that I'll be honest, I don't completely understand this, but essentially, I'm trying to think of some of the other ones because when you go to a church, sometimes there are like different designations, like even Monsignor is different than just being a priest, but there's like different titles you can get, and so a Jesuit priest essentially means you belong to the Society of Jesus, and to really crudely, I guess, put this, I guess it's like an extra, I don't know, affiliation you join with, and I'm imagining since he was from Argentina, there must have been just like strong Jesuit presence there
Okay.
because the Jesuits do a lot of work in like education, social justice, and ministry, especially among like the really poor, like more of a uh, when you what do you call it when you travel, like a
A
missionary.
missionary.
There
Yeah.
we go.
Okay.
Golly. I believe
We're out of
it's
practice,
yeah,
guys.
yeah. Bear with us. I believe it's comes from like Saint Ignatius of Loyola. I think he may have started it. Um, and so really not a lot of differences between being just a priest and a Jesuit priest, although there is a couple extra vows they take. They always
Okay.
take the vow of um, poverty,
Mm-hmm.
and then they take an extra vow of obedience to the Pope, which is just an extra layer. Like, really, every priest kind of does that, but I think it's like part of their vows specifically. Just like same as poverty. A lot of priests take that, but it's not like required. But it is to be a Jesuit in that Society of Jesus.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's more than I knew about it.
I still don't fully understand it, but
Anything else on Pope Francis?
not that I wrote down.
Okay. One thing I wanted to note about him, again, here we are one episode back, and I'm already going to be turning you guys back to Emily Stimson Chapman, but she wrote a really excellent article today about, a lot of people, herself somewhat included, I think, and she alludes to that. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she basically said in the article that, when Pope Francis first came to be in, Pope Francis in, I guess 2013 is when Pope Benedict resigned.
Yeah. Yes.
Is it resigned or retired? I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what they say
I don't
there,
know
but
about that.
you get
That-
what
I-
you
that
get what
doesn't-
I'm.
That doesn't happen often.
Yeah. So when he came to be in 2013, there were some things that came out. And so, she was a writer at the time. And so she kind of wrote a response to something he had said, sort of like saying, I think this was the light with which he meant it, blah, blah, blah. And then she did it one more time, and then she quit. And she was like, I can't do that. I shouldn't have to do that. Honestly, there's better people to write those types of things. Not that the Pope doesn't need to be, talked about, and that writers don't need to be attuned with what he's putting out there and everything. But her point was, there was enough of them going around. It was like her realization over time too was that, man, this Pope is dealing with something that pretty much no pope before him dealt with, in that he, in 2013, that was kind of the jumping off point of
Social
media.
Yeah.
I mean, we had it before, but it was nothing like what it really came to be in those years, right in the beginning of his papacy.
Yeah.
And obviously, even over just the last 5 years, you look at where we've gone with social media. And her point in the article was just that what an immense burden Pope Francis bore.
Yeah.
That her point was like, I could not have done it.
Well, and then, there's, we won't get into the weeds of this with all the politics and stuff, but just look at the politics we've all lived through from that time.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's where a lot of people say the jumping off of all of this, one side or the other, so strongly was really all throughout.
Well, and
time.
The advance of algorithms and all the things, and the AI and the editing, the news story,
everything just
that's
got
tailored
polarizing.
to you. Yes.
So right, wrong, however you feel about
Right.
one side or the other, that's just something that nobody else really had to deal with.
Nobody had to deal with before him.
To this degree.
Yes. It's like one thing, like we all knew via social media that he had died before the bells of St. Peter had even rung. And that used to be like the announcement to people.
That's true too.
So just what a different, um, oh gosh, what's the term?
I
Not
don't
term,
know.
but what a different
World time thing.
world time thing. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, hello. We'll get back in the swing of this. Maybe it's also too late. We usually don't do this too late, but today's too late. But we don't care. We're gonna push through it anyways. But yeah, what a strange and heavy burden for Pope Francis to have borne in his papacy during just the social media era that we're in.
Yeah. So let's pivot here.
Okay.
Now let's just go through kind of what the Pope is, what that looks like, and we'll kind of define some terms, especially, look, Darcy was looking up ones and asking me about them, and I'm like, I have no idea. I know some of them, not very well. But to start off with, if you've been under a rock and don't really know, the Pope is the leader of the Catholic Church.
Yes.
So I actually saw something online that will kind of make this easy to visualize. It's a pyramid. The Pope would be at the top of that pyramid. Underneath, you would have cardinals. And those are the leading bishops and members of the College of Cardinals.
Yes.
Those will be the ones, we'll talk about them in a minute. They will be, I'm going to describe this poorly, but almost how in America here we have a president and then we have a Congress. Although here our Congress is actually who pushes laws and stuff like that, so it differentiates, but how you have that level below. Under cardinals, you're going to have archbishops. So that's going to be more of like a regional aspect. And like, I'm trying to think of what archdiocese we fall under technically in Texas. But
I don't even know.
yeah. So I always think
a group of dioceses.
Well, yeah, I always
Correct?
think about this like from sports or whatever, from like high school. You play for your school, that would be your church, right? And then you have your district, that would be your diocese, and then your archdiocese is like your region. So you have archbishops that are going to be over the whole region, and then below that you'll have bishops, which are the head of your, like I said, with our sports analogy, UIL sports analogy here, it'd be like your district. Then under that will be the priests, and at a church you'll typically have a head pastor, associate pastor, and then deacons under that. And then I always like that they do this, just so we're all clear. The bottom of the pyramid is just the lay people.
Yes.
Or
yeah. The
us.
laity.
Laity. There you go. Laity. It's like lay people's actually like deacons and stuff.
Right. Well, because and we all have a priestly calling as well, just not quite the same. But we're not left out of that priestly calling.
Yeah, but
Okay.
that's the
hierarchy.
Yeah, so everybody go draw that out so you can follow along here.
While we're here, let's talk about kind of the institution of the Pope by God, even though maybe God didn't use the term Pope at the time.
Well,
in the Bible.
First off, what is Pope?
Oh yeah, that's is it Greek or Hebrew?
Ancient
for
Greek, yeah.
Greek
Papas.
for papas.
No, papacitos. Papa.
Yeah.
Father.
Yeah, so he's the Holy Father here on earth.
Yeah, like father's head of the family.
Yes.
Pope's head of the church.
Yes. And so where this all stems from is in Matthew, well, at least that may be said in other places, but in other Gospels. But Matthew 16:18, Jesus says, and I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ.
Yeah.
That's Matthew 16. So that's where all of this kind of comes from, and Peter is what Catholics would say is he was our first pope, even
Yes.
though we weren't using that term at the time. He was the first leader of the church. And then we kind of read as sporadically as we could pack into our research for this before our episode. But in the, in those early days after Christ's death and resurrection, it's not like Christianity was. There were times where it was illegal.
Well, even then, it was.
Yeah, it was. Well, that's what I mean.
AKA Jesus was killed.
Yeah, Jesus was killed for it. It was illegal. I mean, Peter denied him for a few
Peter
nights
was
there.
killed for it. Most of the
Peter was killed.
Disciples were killed for it. So.
Right. And
so it's a little hard to follow the line.
Yeah, so if you're looking for, all of who was Pope number 2 and 3 and
Linus.
4. Yes, we have all of that, but it does get a little hairy there in the beginning where there's.
Well, the Vatican wasn't there.
That's what
one.
I mean. So, and was it like in year 400, the 4th century, where it began to have a little more structure, the church and the
everything makes
a.
I don't remember what year it is, but obviously the huge fundamental change with Christianity was all with Constantine, because that's when Christianity became.
Which was the 4th century, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I'm saying regardless of when it is, it's Constantine was what was the big change.
Yes. So then it was legalized, and again, was able to kind of get some more openness and some structure to it, and has only obviously grown from there. But that's where all that to say, that's where this line of thought, line of teaching comes from, wherein that we have the Pope and choose a successor and all those things. So. Is this where you wanted me to go through my vocabulary list that I was?
Maybe, but to keep people interested, I'll sprinkle in some fun facts as we go.
Okay, do you have one ready?
Yeah, I got a whole page of them. Some of these I did not know.
Brian wants to be the fun uncle here.
Yeah. Well,
I will teach you guys something.
Exactly. You've been single-handedly keeping this thing going. I'm here for just sprinkling in.
All right, well, give us a laugh.
Well, I don't know if it's a laugh. It's just more interesting than your vocabulary definitions here.
Set you up for failure already.
Yeah. Catholic or not Catholic, you may wonder why the Pope changes their name. Technically, they do not have to. I did not even know that. Look, Jesus and God changed a whole bunch of people's names in the Bible.
Right.
So
AKA Simon to Peter.
Abram to Abraham.
Right.
Just throughout the Bible.
Yeah, throughout the Bible.
So
noting like a change in basically a huge marker of change in their spiritual life.
And it even comes into play later with what you and I were talking before we started.
Oh gosh, I don't remember that. Okay, keep going.
But anyways, so they don't have to change their name. I honestly thought it was based off of people having their name changed in the Bible, but it had more to do with, oh gosh, I don't know what year this will have been, but Pope Mercurius, however you say that, yeah, did not think the Pope should be named after the pagan god Mercury. So he chose John 2, in honor of his predecessor, John 1. So whatever year that was, for Jeopardy, you may have to look that up. I want to say it's in the 1400s or something. That's when he was the first one to actually change his name.
Interesting. Okay.
And okay, never mind. I do have the year. I just didn't read it. 533.
Oh, wow. That was early on then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they all had baptismal names until then. The last pope to keep his baptismal name was Marcellus in 1555, which even at that time, because they had started changing names so much earlier on, he was the last one to I'm good. I'm just going to keep my name.
Interesting. So everybody else has.
Yeah, and a lot of it I was reading was when you started getting popes from the German provinces and France and stuff, they wanted to have more traditional sounding names, so that's why they were changing. And
it all just does point again towards what all becoming the father of the
You're
the
right.
Catholic Church, um what all you're taking on there, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, what a transition.
There's only one name that doesn't get chosen.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me that earlier. What was it?
Nice pause there.
Well, I don't remember it.
It's Peter.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah, because they don't want to be compared to the first
Yeah.
leader of the church.
Yeah.
That was
Well,
namely that he was chosen by God.
yes, exactly. And Jesus chose Peter, not the cardinals.
So they don't want to name themselves Peter.
Or no. Well, no one will take the name Peter. And
Is
not
that
that
kind
they
of like a
can't.
retired jersey?
Yeah, it's hanging from the rafters. Can't use that one anymore. But yeah, it's out of respect. And then last fun one that I had was in 1978, oh God, I'm gonna get his name wrong too. Albino Lucini was the first double named pope, which I did not really realize was a thing until that late in time. He was the first one to take John Paul I, which a lot of us will remember John Paul II, who was his successor, but he chose John Paul to honor the two immediate predecessors of his, Pope John, Pope Paul. I don't know which number they were, but John's been the most popular name, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, he was the first one to do John Paul. And honestly, I didn't know that because I knew it was John Paul I, John Paul II. And honestly, I'd never really looked up the list of popes before. The only ones I've ever known was John Paul I, John Paul II, Peter, and Linus. I knew Linus was number 2. That's all.
Oh, you did? Impressive. Okay.
Oh, that's strictly because of
Catechism?
no, Charlie Brown.
Oh.
The catechism.
Okay.
Come on.
Sorry. All right.
No, it's just an easy name to remember.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, that's very interesting.
All right, vocab time.
Yeah. Man, what a crazy thing, though. Like, if you're, you've just been appointed pope and you're like, ugh, do you have your names lined up by then, you think?
I feel like if you're a cardinal and there's a potential of you being a pope, you gotta
You gotta have one in your pocket.
Well, yeah, and I guess see, you went through everything at once. The only thing Catholics can kind of hang on here is like we all pick our own confirmation name, and so not like none of our kids are thinking about that, but like the closer you get to confirmation class, you'll start like toying around with some names.
Yeah. Okay. No, I like that. That's super interesting. So now on to my vocabulary.
The vocabulary portion of this episode. This is either going to have a lot of downloads or a lot of just like, ooh.
Yeah. I just thought all this was interesting, and I just kept going down a trail of like, what does this term mean? What does this term mean?
The reason I asked you to do this because it gets confusing for Catholics, so I imagine especially for Protestants, there's a lot of when anything with the Pope pops up in the news, it causes, to our point on social media, a lot of waves. But there is, go figure, a lot of tradition and structure that goes on with the Pope. So like there's terminology and stuff that if you don't know what you're looking at and following with how the procedure works, you'll just be kind of like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
So,
well, even reading through all of this, I could read it 4 more times and not have my head totally wrapped around it.
Yeah. We're not going to fully grasp what we're about to tell you guys.
Don't think that you're about to graduate on this class on the Pope after what I have to say. But a few things, and I guess where I started here was I was like, what exactly is canon law? That's where I started. Because that's a term that gets thrown around within, and not just with the Pope, but just the Catholic Church and its authority and everything. So while canon law is authoritative and provides the legal framework for the Church, it's not the source of infallible teaching. It includes both divine law, universal and unchanging, and ecclesiastical law, church-specific rules.
Yes.
And so that's That's one of them that I was looking up. And then another term that I was trying to figure out was like the Pope's, well, not even just the Pope, but the infallibility. That term, like a teaching, whether it's infallible or not.
Yeah.
Um, and so the Pope does have infallibility in that. I'm going to be very poor at explaining this, but I'm going to try. So you can think of, and I'm going to come back to this in a minute, this little anecdote here, this little symbolism. But
Good.
if you think of the Pope as a president, he can put in place like executive orders, if you will.
Yes.
Like he doesn't have to go through a council to put out a writing that leads the church somewhere, if that makes sense.
I think we can follow you there.
Okay. But the only time that is really in play, that the Pope's quote unquote infallibility, as defined by Vatican I, is limited to his official teachings on matters of faith and morals when he speaks ex cathedra, which means from the chair of St. Peter.
Which is very rare.
Very, very rare.
As a matter of fact, I couldn't even name you the last time it's happened.
No, I don't know that it's happened in our lifetime. We could be wrong here. Again, like y'all can check us, but from what I read, I don't know that it's even happened in our lifetime, and I don't think it's very rare.
Of course, we're young.
We're not that young anymore, dear. But
Youngish.
anyways, yeah, we're youngish. But that is, I guess the picture that I'm trying to paint here is that when we talk about things like the Pope having infallibility, I think that probably freaks people out if you don't know about it or haven't heard of it before. Like, what? That's so dangerous. He's still a human, and he is, and he never claims not to be. And there have been times where the church has gone through, corruption. Hello. I mean, we all to some extent have learned about, like I said, to some extent those times. So it's not like it hasn't happened. It's not like things haven't even necessarily been walked back at some point. It's not like we don't acknowledge the humanness of.
Hold on, we gotta pause here.
Oh gosh.
No, because we were right. By a long shot. There is no set list of infallible church teachings, but that's because only 2 have been proclaimed ex cathedra.
Okay, that's what I read earlier too, but I didn't want to say it because I wasn't positive. I was reading. I hate to read one source on Google and like let AI give me an overview on something and then just spout it out on here really
this
confidently.
wasn't from the AI thing. This is on a U.S. Catholic website, so I hope it's true.
Mm-hmm.
And just for another Jeopardy thing, both are about Mary, her Immaculate Conception, declared by Pope Pius in 1854, and her bodily assumption into heaven, declared by Pope Pius in 1950. So there may be some of you when it was declared that we're still alive, but not us.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're right.
Yeah. So it not in our lifetime. The whole point is that it dissimilar to a president in his executive orders, the Pope does not speak ex cathedra often. The Pope puts out all kinds of encyclicals that I think are meant for archbishops and bishops and all of the clergy, I suppose, and meant as I don't know, imparting wisdom and thoughts on different things that are happening in the world. So of course he puts out those kinds of things.
No, every pope does that, and there's obviously a lot of I don't want to call them rules, but statements that will be made, or teachings, I guess is what we'll say, teachings of the Catholic Church that come out. But what we're specifically talking about here, because I think there gets confusion, especially if you're with a Protestant church, because it's very confusing, I think, of like, wait, so there's there's a head, like there's a boss. It almost makes you say, oh, there's a boss of
Well,
you.
it's kind of like I was saying earlier. I think a lot of people picture the Pope as like the king of Catholicism,
Yeah,
whereas nobody sees him as the king, although he does have like authority. He's a father. That's what his name means.
yeah,
So a father has rules. He has rules of his house that he puts in place. But primarily he's leading his family
yeah. And so
in a
the
direction.
purpose of what we're going with here on some of these vocab terms is,
Yeah.
especially with like ex cathedra, what to remember here is no matter whether you agree or disagree with anything the Pope
Yeah.
says, while it carries a lot more weight than anything like you and I say on this podcast. when it
Thank
comes out of the
goodness.
well, I'm just saying, like, we're Catholic people. Whatever we say is whatever. I don't want to downplay like what the Pope says as being to that level, but
Right.
it's just still lots from the Vatican. It's not whether you agree or disagree. It's not like that's not canon law to your other definition you were giving out earlier.
Yes. Speaking about some of the letters that and writings and documents that popes will put out in an effort, obviously, to lead the church, right?
Right.
I liked this term, a papal bull. So that is what they call
like
an official
bull with horns.
Yeah, that's the spelling and everything.
Nice.
A papal bull is an official papal letter or document, traditionally sealed with a lead seal, or I guess you pronounce this bulla.
Nah.
Bulla. Used to announce important decisions, decrees, or declarations. These bulls are considered a solemn form of papal communication, often used for matters such as canonizations, declaration of dogma, or granting privileges. Now, what's interesting about this, and yes, I am interesting too, Brian, is that this came to be because if you think about it, back before they had computers and everything, and it was all just your written word or your word, if you didn't seal something with a unique seal, you could just be forged.
No, it makes me think of, and this is going to be the most anti way we're going right here, but like Game of Thrones stuff.
Yeah.
Like when they would send the ravens and stuff.
Yes.
Like, oh, this has King Robert's seal.
Yes.
Like,
No, that's exactly
unbroken.
it.
It's an unbroken seal.
That's exactly it.
It's
so
legit.
the Pope has a ring. I don't know if he wears it all the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, he has a ring that has his seal on it, and that's how you know it's from the Pope, which, again, is more tradition now and just kind of really cool if you ask me. But
go into that, what you were talking about.
when the
day.
Pope dies?
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. We should have said that in the beginning part.
Okay. So when the Pope dies, there is a person that is already been named ahead of time called, I think it's the Carmelengo.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you say that either, but it means Chamberlain.
Mm-hmm.
And they are the person that goes into the room and they call out the Pope
They ask 3 questions.
Yes, they ask 3 questions, same questions. They call out the Pope by his baptismal name, so he would have said Jorge, whatever.
Are you sleeping? Is what they'll say.
I know. I can't. I just keep wanting to call him Bertolli, like the pasta.
You're just hungry.
It sounds disrespectful. He's not even in the ground yet. Anyways, he says, Jorge, are you sleeping? And if there's no answer, he asks again, Jorge, are you sleeping? Jorge, are you sleeping? And assuming he doesn't answer and the Pope is, in fact, passed, he takes his ring and crushes it so that seal can't be used.
Yeah, ties in with what we're saying here.
Yeah.
Also funny because they still do it today. Obviously,
it's a ceremony.
Yes, obviously today it's ceremonial.
It's tradition. It's ceremony.
I know, but it just makes me think about like before technology and stuff like that.
Yes.
Like, and really, like, if you didn't have a doctor there or anything like this, must be how they decide.
Well, in this day and age, I think the people would have been fine to just let the Pope die, and if nobody knows about it, we'll just some other group or party will keep ruling for him.
Yeah.
So you get where it's coming from.
Yes,
for sure. That's I love that kind of tradition. I love that's carried on. I think it's very cool. It's part of the reason we wanted to do this podcast, to shed a little light on these things, even though I'm sure we've gotten in the weeds over more than we should have here.
It's just ankle deep.
Yeah. But anyways, a couple other thoughts. Can I have two more thoughts? Do we have time for that?
Yeah, you have two.
Okay. So I mentioned this earlier about like popes and presidents. So when I was trying to wrap my head around the papal office, and like obviously that's different from where I came from. It was kind of explained to me like this, and I really, the other day, just thinking about this upcoming transition, this succession to the next pope, kind of locked in on this anecdote that I hope is helpful for some people. The pope is kind of like a president in that we may not always agree with every single decision that's made, but we hope that we've chosen the right president to lead our country, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can feel kind of the same way with the Pope. Now, as Catholics, we are called to do our best and hopefully have chosen the right Pope to be able to agree with most everything that is put out there, right? But it was also described this way this week as I was reading through some things. I've heard multiple people describe it like this. I had a tough relationship with this Pope. However, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. He is no Catholic should be claiming that the Pope is anything but human. He's a human, but he is our Holy Father here on earth. And yes, there may be mistakes made and all those kinds of things, but we have a relationship. He has a duty to lead the church, and therefore us being also the church and being led by him, we are in relationship with him. And sometimes you might struggle with what he's saying, or the way he's teaching, or something that you
no different than you could with any church you go to.
Exactly.
Just the pastor or priest there.
Exactly. And so I just think it's a good image to have that, and to remember that he is a father figure, not a king or something, some kind of like mighty ruler or something. He's a father figure. He's leading us. I mean, look, I believe that God is picking our next pope and has picked everyone up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Have they all performed up to what God
well, none would have.
Yeah, exactly. None would have performed to what God would have done himself here, I'm sure. But that kind of brings me to my second point, which is, I think one of the other stumbling blocks with the Pope is like, well, he is human. Why not just follow? He is going to mess up and everything. So why not just follow Jesus? Well, of course we are following Jesus. Mm-hmm. That is the whole point of Christianity, correct? But
I think so. It's not popianity.
But one of the thoughts I had earlier when I was reading about some of this stuff is God in the Old Testament, from the days of the Old Testament, I should say, and all the way through the Bible.
This is what I was talking about, yeah.
Oh, okay. From the days of the Old Testament, rarely did God just speak through a cloud to somebody or something, speak directly to his people.
Oh, yeah, not to the masses for sure.
Yeah. He always had a representative here on earth. Mm-hmm. Think of Abraham, of Moses. I mean, you could go on and on. Basically, everybody in the
Definitely everyone who had a name change.
Yes. But all of those people were...
And they all messed up, too.
Yes, precisely. That's kind of my point. But it didn't keep God from just saying, I'm just not even going to name a leader. Let me just, I don't know, speak from a cloud there, or like, I'm going to be a ball of fire or something. I mean, he was to those people in different moments. Yeah. Obviously, he did all those things. Actually, he was a cloud and a ball of fire and all those things. But my point is, he often had a representative here on earth to help lead the people.
Yes.
And so that was all throughout the Old Testament, and lots of things change in the New Testament. Correct? Yes.
Yes.
Lots of things change in the New Testament. But he's still named Peter.
Yeah, that's
as
what I was
his
going to say.
successor.
Whether, not to go off track here, but
Not as his successor. I said that weird, but he
well,
named
the
Peter to
church.
lead the church.
Yeah,
there we go.
And that's where, oh man, it's either, I think it's Matthew. Remember
That's
when
what I read earlier.
when he keeps saying, "Simon, do you love me?"
Yes.
Feed my people.
Mm-hmm.
Watch over my people.
Yes.
So that's what we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, anyways, I know we have listeners out there that are not Catholic and Catholic. I know we have a mix out there, obviously. And I hope this was interesting for everybody. You don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to agree with even the office of the Pope, but maybe you have a little more perspective on where it all came
now
from.
You'll know. And so just to give you the next steps here, as you probably see it on the news in the upcoming days, but now you'll be like, I know what's going on here. They will have a papal conclave. That's when the cardinal electors will gather in the Vatican City, and they will sequester themselves to vote. This is where it's, very famous, the black smoke or the white smoke. Black means there's not a new pope yet. White means there is. One interesting thing I did not know. So I couldn't tell you how many cardinals there are, but you have to be under the age of 80 to vote for the pope. Yeah. So, and that's also, we're not getting ballots in our churches, just so you know.
That's another
you
difference. You
kind of said
between...
that, like, the difference of the presidency, like, well, we don't pick them. It's it's the cardinals. But they they sequester themselves. I don't really know what happens in there, but I believe it's a lot. They go through a lot of prayer and stuff, and they have to have a 2/3 vote. And this is why it takes, you'll see likely a lot of black smoke once they sequester, because it usually takes numerous times before a new pope is appointed.
So is it like days?
Yeah.
Weeks?
Yeah, usually. Let's see. John Paul II was for a long time in my childhood. But then I was young. I did not pay attention. Even through like Benedict. But yeah, no, I don't know if weeks, but definitely days.
Yeah. I would assume. Okay. I started this week kind of going down like, okay, I'm going to read up on all of the front runners for Pope, and I did a little bit.
I did a little bit.
And I am following the process because I find it fascinating, right?
Yeah.
But at some point, and under the wisdom of probably Emily Simpson Chapman again, and somebody else. Now
she owes us money.
I know, and I should. Oh yeah, I should give somebody else credit. It was another account too, but they were just like, our responsibility here is to pray.
Yeah,
we don't even need to get caught up in all of the news. There's going to be a lot going on. We just need to first pray. And Father Mike Schmitz said that today on one of his things he put out was, even before, like, the Pope dies, and the first thing we do is we pray.
Yes.
We pray for all of it. And so the whole process. And for the soul of Pope Francis, which I know is another kind of somewhat controversial thing, like, well, his soul, it should be in heaven, right? But depending on what you believe. But I think what I'm praying for, in light of just kind of contemplating more like the burden he had here on earth, that I don't envy, and also the standard to which teachers are held, teachers of the faith, what the Bible says about, you'll be held to a higher standard. I'm just praying that he's resting in eternal peace.
And I even think whether you're Catholic or Protestant form of Christianity, I think everyone recognizes the importance of the office of the Pope, like just in Christianity and in its existence. So whether you're Catholic or not, you should still be in prayer for not only Pope Francis, but also for who the next Pope will be.
Yes, precisely.
And I mean, 50% of us are still in the running for it right now. Here, technically, it will assuredly be a cardinal that is selected.
He means 50% of us, as in he's
I'm in the
runner.
running.
Yeah,
I'm not pulling my name out. So I'm just gonna assume the first black smoke y'all see is probably, it's probably for me.
Yeah,
I just couldn't get 2/3, but we're all
maybe next time.
You don't have to. Yeah, the joke I'm making here is anyone can be the Pope. So it doesn't have to be.
And we all have a priestly calling.
Exactly. So that's the point of it. But
yeah.
So yeah, until the white smoke comes, I'm just gonna keep I'll keep your
waiting.
phones charged up.
Your phones charged. Okay, gosh. All right, we need to end this episode. Do you have any final thoughts?
That was it.
That was it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, I can't tell y'all when we'll have our next topic.
We're not gonna lie to you again.
Yeah, we're not gonna lie to you again.
We still have some baseball to go.
Yeah, we still have a couple more weeks of baseball, but I'm glad to be back doing topics, and I'm sure there will be more to come on this because we'll have more news over the next few weeks on this particular office. But we'll keep researching. I've got some up my sleeve that I want us to do. It's just a matter of actually getting to get up here and record. So we'll keep you in the loop. Follow us on our social media. Do you remember how to sign us out of this?
Yeah. Now that we have unpacked the office of the Pope, you go discuss.